those sounds form words, and those words again are not arbitrary. When put together, those letters together represent something. And you can even have signs. Signs may not have words on them, but they represent something, like a community sign. A sign for with a little blue sign with a little man on it means that that's the boys' restroom. Those are things that kids, even special needs kids, even special needs preschoolers, can understand and need to understand. Um, how does this relate to promoting later reading skills? When they understand that uh, the writing on a paper holds meaning, then they know that they're supposed to look for meaning in that writing, or in that symbol. Even like a question mark by itself holds meaning. An exclamation point holds meaning. Those kinds of things are things that uh, kids need to learn, so that later in life, when they are reading, they understand that every mark on that paper has some sort of meaning, and that helps to promote their literacy skills. And my two examples of how I'm going to do this in my classroom is example one, number one, community signs. Um, I teach about the community in my classroom. Like I mentioned before, the a bathroom sign with a blue bathroom sign with a white little man on it. That means it's the boys' restroom. Or a white little woman on a little skirt. That means it's the girls' restroom. A stop sign, a street crossing sign. These are things that my kids need to learn about. Some of them don't have words on them. Sometimes we use restaurant signs. Again, they might not have words on them, but my kids know that if they see a red square with golden arches on it, they know that means McDonald's, and for most of my kids, that means French fries. Um, and a lot of them, in fact, I have a student who, when she sees the golden arches, will tell me French fries. She knows, for in her world, that symbol means French fries. Um, my example number two is when I read a story to the children, especially my kids who are at the point where they are starting to understand that the words on the paper mean something. They're starting to understand that letters carry sound. Um, for those kids, when I'm reading, well, for all my kids, but especially for those kids, when I'm reading, I might, as I read the book, say, oh, I will read to them and I will go click, clack, moo, cows that type. So that they know that when I say something, what I'm doing is I'm actually reading and I'm not just making up something about the pretty picture on the page. Number 5. Okay, so number 6. It is important that early childhood educators work to develop a child's early recognition of the sounds of their language and early recognition of sound and symbol relationships. Again, this kind of goes hand in hand with the last question. Um, hold on. To restate that is, so it's important as for me as a special ed preschool teacher to make sure my students understand that each letter it represents a sound. Sometimes each letter represents multiple sounds, especially vowels represent multiple sounds. Um, and that those letters who read that represent sounds, when put together, represent a word, and so they know that they can take those sounds and they can sound out the letters in order to make a word. um, and the next question, why is it important to the reading skills, I kind of just answered that, is they know that if each letter has a sound and they can put those sounds together to make a word, then along with, many words, especially in the English language, you can't just sound them out, but they can get pretty close most of the time. But by sounding out the words, by knowing the sounds each letter makes, they can sound out a word, and read most anything in the English language. Um, Examples and strategies for activities. Well, for my special ed preschoolers, we have several songs, several activities that we do. We have several songs that um, gives a picture of something that starts with a letter and says, tells us the sounds or sounds that the letters make. One that I do regularly with my children is um, my kids call it apple apple because it goes apple apple and it goes through that with all the letters. Or there's the Letter Factory. That's a fun video that has I forget how that song goes. I've watched it a million times. Um, but anyhow, but another activity is, and it's something that I do daily with my kids, is whatever letter our letter of the week is. Like, let's say for example, our letter of the week was B this week. We have several activities where we have a picture of a capital B and a picture of a lowercase b, and I have different pictures of I have a bottle and a baby and a bear and things that start with the letter B, and we talk about each thing that starts that. So I say, what is this? It's a bear. Bear. It starts with B, and they have to match the picture with the letter, so that they know what they know that the B represents the sound B, and B is the beginning sound of all of these things, all of these nouns that most of them are already familiar with. Okay, and the last question. Last question. What is the most important message about promoting communication and language that you will be taking away from you in this class? I think the most important thing that I've learned from this class, and I think something that everybody needs to understand, is language isn't just words. Language is communication. It can be looks. You can communicate without talking. That's my sister, my best friend. I can communicate with her to her without talking at all. All I have to do is, someone walks in the room and I look at her and I go, she knows exactly what I mean. And it's the same thing with our littles, especially our littles with developmental delays. They communicate in so many different ways. They communicate through crying. They communicate with their behavior. They communicate by reaching up to us. They communicate. They can communicate so many ways without ever saying a word. And it's important for us to encourage that communication, because as we encourage their form of communication, and then they're more likely to communicate more. And when we have those communication opportunities are opportunities for us to teach them how to communicate verbally or communicate using another form of functional communication, whether it be sign language or a PEC system or anything. The more we encourage those communication opportunities, the more opportunities we have to teach them the communication that will make sense to every communication partner they have, not just a familiar partner. And I think that is the most important thing I've learned from this class. Anyhow, that is all my 7 questions. I hope I answered them satisfactorily for you. And again, I've thoroughly enjoyed this class. Even though it was a late night class and was sometimes hard to get through, your enthusiasm made it a lot easier to get through, and I thank you for that. And hopefully if I don't have you for another class,